Do I look like someone who was recently turned down or rejected or experienced some sort of heartache? Because the fact is, I did, but I'm moving on with my life and I feel really good about it. Now, if I had found myself in similar circumstances just a few years ago, I would be a total wreck. And I've gone through that so many times in my life, and it's often been excruciatingly difficult. But I've learned over time how to handle it, and each time it's gotten easier. And of course, I've had a lifetime of practice. So today I'm going to share with you how to let go and get over someone so that you can move on with your life. And that could be someone who you were in a long-term relationship with or just dating for a short time. Or it could even be someone you never actually got the opportunity to date, a case of unrequited love or rejection. But whatever the case, you can't seem to shake them from your mind. And it might be difficult to focus on anything else, on the things that you need to be doing for yourself, to focus on life. And I know what it's like because, as I said, I've been through that so many times in my own life. And I went through this sort of thing very recently with someone, which is why I'm inspired to talk about it. When it comes to getting over someone, there's a lot of advice out there in regard to distracting yourself, staying busy, getting back into the dating scene, and so on. And all of those are really just temporary distractions, if they even work at all, because sometimes they can actually backfire on you. For example, you might go out on a date with someone new, and all you can think about is how they don't measure up to the person who you're all hung up on. Or you go out and do something really fun, and suddenly you're thinking about how great it would be if that person was there to share in the experience. So these kinds of things, which are meant to lift us up, can sometimes wind up bringing us down. And so no matter what we do, we just can't seem to get this person out of our mind. So what we really have to understand is why we're so hung up on this person all the time. Because understanding that is what's going to help us to let go and move forward. And I'm not talking about what it is that we like about them, all the things we seem to have in common, the potential of a relationship, and so on. What I'm talking about specifically is hope. Now, this person may have been very clear that the relationship is over, or that there's not going to be any relationship, or that they just don't see you in a romantic sense, or whatever it happens to be. And for whatever the reason, we haven't accepted that. In our mind, we imagine that perhaps given time, they'll come around, they'll change their mind, they'll realize how wonderful you are or how terrible their new partner is, and they'll come back to you. And so we carry this fantasy that one day, hopefully sooner than later, we'll be together. And it's that hope that keeps that fantasy alive in us and keeps us holding on. But as long as that fantasy doesn't come true, we're going to suffer, we're going to feel lonely, we're going to be sad, disappointed, unable to fully enjoy life. And it's going to be difficult to focus and function the way that we normally would. And in my experience, both personally as well as observing others, those fantasies rarely ever come true. Now, I could be in love with someone who seems to be my ideal match, who I have a great deal in common with. We're really compatible. The time that we spend together is always fun and fulfilling. And as far as I can tell, we would make the perfect couple. But for some reason unknown to me, they're in love with someone else, or they just don't see me in a romantic sense, or we had a relationship for a while, but for some reason they weren't satisfied with that. So my perception of us having the potential of being a really amazing couple may not be entirely imaginary. It might be a very accurate and realistic potential. But if the other person can't see that, or has a different perspective, or whatever the case, then it doesn't even matter. The fact of the matter is that for whatever the reason, they've decided that we're not going to be together in that way. And so I have to accept that. I have to accept that in spite of how amazing we might be together, the other person has chosen otherwise. And that hope that maybe given time they'll come around and realize that they're better off with me than without me or with someone else, that hope has to go. That's the only way that I can let go and move on with my life. Otherwise, if I'm holding on and waiting, I'm not able to give my attention and energy to my own life, what I need to be doing for myself. And I get stuck, I become stagnant, and I go on waiting. And in my experience, that person isn't really worth waiting for, or at least they never come back. And so it's a waste of time and energy waiting and hoping. So as difficult as it may seem, the best way for us to get over this person is to let go of that hope and to accept fully that it's over and they're not coming back. It's done. It might have been great once, or there might have been so much unexpressed potential, but the reality is that they've made their decision, and we have to accept that. And we have to accept that they're not likely to change their mind about it. We have to really bring it into our mind that it's done, it's over, and to let go of that hope entirely. And that can be really difficult to accept, but that's really the only way that we're going to be able to move on with our lives. And if that means that we have to mourn and grieve and cry our eyes out, then do that. Sometimes the advice people give us encourages us to hold back those kinds of emotions, to repress them. But I'm saying if you need to let that out, then let it out. If you feel sad, really allow yourself to feel it, to go through it, to process and digest it. Otherwise, you might not ever be able to fully release it. So allow all of those feelings to be experienced so that you can let them go. And every time you catch yourself thinking about that person, fantasizing, imagining being together, keep reminding yourself that it's done, it's over, they made their decision, and it's time for you to let go of any hope that you have, any expectation, and really begin to move on with your life, to refocus your attention and energy on whatever you need to be doing for yourself. Now, one of the things that's really helped me is to simply embrace the fact that the other person has decided not to pursue a relationship with me. And I don't put too much thought into why they've made that decision. It could be for any number of reasons, which might be reasonable or unreasonable. But the fact is that for whatever the reason, they're not willing to give their time and energy to that relationship. They're not willing to invest in it, to honor it, to appreciate it, to appreciate what it may offer to them. And something that I've come to realize in my life is that in order for a relationship to be really healthy and successful, there needs to be a mutual reciprocation of energy. And that begins at least with a mutual interest, a mutual appreciation for one another. And to me, this is of such great importance. It's a must-have. So just the very fact alone that this person is not showing a mutual interest or doesn't seem to fully appreciate what a relationship with me may offer, or they don't seem to fully appreciate my qualities or what I have to share with them, or they aren't willing to fully honor whatever relationship we do seem to have, any of that tells me that they're not really interested. They're not really invested. And to me, that's actually a bit of a turnoff. I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't fully appreciate me or that relationship, or who isn't fully invested, who isn't truly interested. Because even if somehow I could convince them to give it a go, they're not going to be there because they really want to be there. It's not going to be authentic, and ultimately it's not going to work. So basically, I don't really want to be with someone who doesn't really want to be with me, and I'm not going to chase after them and beg them and try to convince them to change their mind. I'm not going to beg them to give me a chance. The way I see it is that they've had their chance to be with me, and I know what my value is. I know what I have to offer to a relationship. And if someone isn't capable of recognizing it, or they do recognize it, but they can't honor it for some reason, or they don't appreciate that, then it's really their loss. And as I said, I'm not interested in being with someone who can't honor the connection that we have, or who doesn't fully appreciate me, or who simply isn't interested. So any sign of disinterest coming from them causes me to lose interest, and I'm not going to give my time and energy to pursuing someone who isn't giving their time and energy to me in that same regard. I'm going to move on with my life. And one of the things I think we often get hung up on is, what if this person is the one we were meant to be with? Or what if they're the best possible match for us and we might not ever meet someone better suited? And the reality may be that all of the potential partners we've met so far in our lives, this person seems to be the best suited for us at this particular time. But don't forget that there's 7.5 billion people in the world, and you've only met a very tiny fraction of them. Do you really think that there's no one out there better suited to you? Because the reality is that no matter how perfectly matched someone might seem, there's always going to be areas where you don't match up. And there are so many other people who would be just as close a match, and potentially even better. Just because you haven't met them doesn't mean that they're not out there. And one thing I've learned in life is that if there is someone out there better suited to me, I won't meet that person or recognize them or be open to connecting with them as long as I'm still hung up on someone else. It's really interesting how that works, but if I'm still hung up on someone, it's as if I've closed myself off from the possibility of meeting someone better. And so the world seems to reflect my belief that there's no one better suited to me. But whenever I've gotten over someone and moved on with my life to the point of not even particularly looking for anything or anyone, someone new shows up, and they're usually a way better match than the last person, at least in regard to where I am in my life at that moment. So I look back at all my relationships and I see how each person has been better suited to me than the last, and that tells me that there's probably someone better suited to me than the person I'm currently hung up on. But I need to let that go so I can be open to meeting them. Because even if I met this person now and I'm hung up on someone else, I may not even recognize how amazing this other person is, or it may affect our interaction in such a way that we're not able to fully express ourselves openly and authentically. And so even if there's great potential there, it's not being expressed. And so that affects our connection and chemistry, or rather inhibits it. And so I might be overlooking something really potentially amazing because I'm still holding on to someone else, someone who isn't even invested in being with me. So the reality is that there really are so many other fish in the sea, but you have to open yourself up to that, and you can't do that as long as you're still holding on. So all this comes back to letting that person go by fully accepting that it's over, or that it's just not going to happen. And you got to really embrace that. And I'm telling you from my own experience that whenever I've done that, it's so liberating. It's like walking around with all this heavy baggage, and then one day you just put it down, and all of a sudden everything feels so light. And you can move and breathe and begin to enjoy life again. But you have to let them go. And I'm not saying that you do it all in one moment. Ideally, you want to let them go entirely in one quick moment, like pulling off a bandage. But realistically, even once you've told yourself that it's truly over, you may need time to fully process that and to fully accept it. And that's going to be different for everyone. It might take a few weeks or months or even years. In my case, it usually only takes a few days, but that's only because I've gone through this so many times and I've had a lot of practice. And so I've gotten better at it. And it may be that you have to go through that several times in your own life in order to be able to release more easily. So be patient with yourself, but at the same time, be willing to grow from these kinds of experiences. Be willing to utilize them as opportunities to strengthen your integrity and resolve and to let go of attachments and expectations. And if you find that you're still holding on in hope, just notice that. Keep bringing your awareness to it. And every time you notice, simply remind yourself that it's over and remind yourself that you deserve someone who is just as interested in being with you as you are in being with them. And anything less than that is really not worth your time and energy. And have the integrity to honor yourself in such a way that you're unwilling to waste your time and energy on someone who isn't genuinely interested or appreciative or whatever the case. And once you've begun shifting your mindset in this way, then you can go about doing those things like focusing on work or hobbies, meeting new people, and so on, not as a distraction, but because it's what you really need to be doing for yourself. That is, you want to come back to honoring yourself, your path, your passion, your needs, your growth, and so on. You want to refocus all that attention and energy on yourself and get back to living your life without the need for that person to be a part of it or to be involved in any particular way. Ideally, you want to come to a place of not really needing anyone to be in your life in any particular way in order for you to function, to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be content. You may find yourself in a position of having to be alone for the foreseeable future, but you have to come to terms with that and learn to embrace it, to see it as an opportunity to really get in touch with yourself, to express yourself more fully, to honor yourself in so many ways, to be independent and to fulfill your own emotional needs, to love and nurture yourself. It might be a time for you to examine why you feel such a strong need to be in a relationship. Maybe you're uncomfortable with being alone. Maybe you're looking for acceptance and validation or some other kind of inner fulfillment. And maybe this is a good time for you to start to cultivate those things for yourself. Often the things that we're searching for in relationships are things which we really already have deep within us that have simply been covered over and forgotten. And being in a relationship generally doesn't satisfy those needs and distracts us from going within and fulfilling them ourselves. What we really need is to discover them within ourselves and to work to remove the blockages that keep them from being expressed. And really the best time to do that is when you're alone. And when you do that, it's so empowering. And you find that in regard to relationships, you have a higher level of standards of what you require from a partner. And some of those requirements are simply things like integrity and a mutual balance of energy and interest, of reciprocation. And so when you find yourself presented with someone who isn't showing that same level of interest, already you're losing interest in them. And so if it doesn't evolve into a romantic relationship, it's a lot easier to release that, to not get hung up on that, to let it go and move forward in your life. But right now, utilize the situation as an opportunity to begin practicing this, to begin releasing attachments and expectations, to accept the reality of what is, and to raise your standards to the level of only wanting to be with someone who is just as invested as you are. And if they're not, then don't invest your energy in that. It's not worth it. You deserve something better. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.